So welcome to my creative playground. I am Marilyn San Clemente of Stamp with Marilyn, and this is my creative playground. And today I am going to show you the triple time technique. So this first card is a triple time card that I made with the Tropical Chic set, which is one of my favorite sets. And I'm so glad that that set carried over from last year. I love the look of that set. I love the palms and it just looks so happy. And then the second card, I'm going to show you how to do this with the new label frames. And I used the lighthouse from the new Sailing Home set and the sailboat. And then I used the water and the birds from the High Tide set. So two sets together, and actually they go very well together. So, okay. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do this. So I will set this aside. There's the card that we're going to do first. And with this card, what I did was I stamped my background and then I cut the layers out. And I used Granny Apple Green and Flirty Flamingo. Flirty Flamingo for the smaller layer and Granny Apple Green for the larger layer. And then I used Granny Apple Green Mossy Meadow to stamp the background leaves. And the flowers are Lovely Lipstick and Flirty Flamingo. Some of my favorite color combinations. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stamp our background layer. So to do that, I've got the 3 leaf sets that are part of this set. And the only thing that you need the framelits for with this set does come with framelits, is to cut out the flowers. But the framelits that we are going to use to cut the layers tonight are the stitched dies here. So the stitched rectangles specifically for this card. So we're going to get started. We're going to use Mossy Meadow. And to get different shading on these, I'm going to stamp. You'll see that I stamped off, and I stamped full strength ink, and then I also stamped off as well to do some of the shading. So first I'm going to do, I like this big leafy stamp with the Mossy Meadow. So I'm going to ink that up, stamp that, and I'm going to stamp a couple of times. And I'm going to stamp off a little bit so I can get a second image that's a little bit lighter. That's that. And then now I'm going to use the Granny Apple Green, and I'm going to use the other 2 sets here. And what I'm doing, you'll see, is I'm stamping once with the Granny Apple Green, and then I'm stamping off. But because I stamped this off the edge, this little piece came out a little bit darker, but that's going to be covered up by one of my layers. So that actually is okay. So I'm going to stamp another one, and then I'll stamp off. And next I'm going to stamp this cute little, I love this little leaf, and I'm going to stamp that off as well. Okay, and I think I have my forest. So, oops, I just saw where Smokey passed through. Okay, so now I have my forest, and what I'm going to do is, let me pull my big shot over. And what I want to do, let me see if I can pull this up a little bit. Oops, wrong way, sorry. I have my stitched rectangles. Come on, sweetie pie. I have my stitched rectangles, and what I did was, for this set that, or for this particular card, I used a Sharpie, or you can actually use your blends as well, because those are permanent, and I just marked the pieces that I wanted to use. So for this particular card, I marked those, and we will roll that through. Let me move my inks out of the way. And I'm sorry that that's probably shaking the camera. Okay, so now what I'm going to have, what I have is I have my layers. So I have this layer. Okay, I know. I've been busy working today. She hasn't seen very much of me, so I think she's a little... So the other thing that I've done is I've put together a card base. So I have cut a piece of Whisper White cardstock to 11 inches by 4 1/4, and I have scored it at 5 1/2, and I folded it this way. So that's going to be my card base. And now what I have done was, as I showed you before, I used the Granny Apple Green for the first 2 layers and the Flirty Flamingo for the second. I think what I'm going to try and do for this one is I want to make this one a little bit different. So let's put this on the, oops, Flirty Flamingo. Oops, and that is cut the wrong size. Okay, hopefully this one's not. Or we'll use Granny Apple Green for the first layer. And I'll use Flirty Flamingo for the second layers, the second and third layer. There we go. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is I have my frames now. And this might be a little bit different. I know when I have done triple time before, I have pre-cut the cardstock frames using my cutter. So I've pre-cut these pieces and then I've put them together and stamped them. But with these nice frames, it's really, really easy to you can stamp it first. You don't have to pre-cut things. So now we're going to use this second. We're going to put this on the Flirty Flamingo. It'll be a little bit different. There we go. So you can line up the piece of the leaf with this leaf and so on and so forth. And you can see how these go together. Now the other thing that I was thinking that you could do that would be really cool, oops, is you could also do this and just stamp your message right here, and you don't necessarily have to put that other piece back in, but let's do that. Oh, and I didn't quite layer that enough. Okay. And one of the things that I have learned when I've been stamping is, oops, here we go. Well, that piece might not be good. Okay, because I didn't layer that very straight. So let me do this. I am going to put that on a piece of Flirty Flamingo and I'm going to recut that because I didn't have it on straight. And I have a tendency to be a perfectionist. There we go. Grab my cutter. I'll fix that. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. Now it's layered and it's straight and all that good stuff. So we'll put a piece on there. Okay, now I'll attach this whole thing to my card base. There we go. Okay. And then I stamped the flowers out of the Flirty Flamingo and the lovely lipstick ahead of time so that you didn't have to watch me cut all those. Okay, so we're just going to put a dimensional on the back of each of these flowers. The other thing that I thought would be really pretty was on this card, I stamped a border on the inside. and I stamped a message, and I obviously, you can tell I didn't stamp the border very straight, but we'll give that a go again, and hopefully second time's a charm. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'll cover up this piece. So where I had my leaf that kind of changed shading there, we'll put this over top. And then what I'm going to do is on the inside, I will stamp my message. And I'm going to use the Flirty Flamingo. And we'll see if I can get this lined up this time. And I have not found a good way to line this up. Probably the best way to line it up would be to use the Stamparatus, but because I've already put the card together. Actually, that's not too bad. I'm just going down a little. And I like to stamp my message on the paper first to make sure I have the message going the right way, because I can't tell you how many times I have stamped the message and it hasn't been going the right way. So then what I do is I'll cut out an oval or something and I'll cover up the message that's upside down. And that's that. So there's our first triple time card. And that was using the stitched rectangle framelets. And the next card that we're going to do is I wanted to show you this Sail Away card. I love this paper. And so what we're going to do for this piece is same thing. I have a piece of the Whisper White, and I use the largest rectangle frame, which comes out to be 3 7/8 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to I'll stamp the birds from the High Tide set and the tide from the High Tide set, and then I will stamp the lighthouse and the sailboat from the Sailing Home set. So for the water, what better than Seaside Spray? This pretty kind of bluish gray. So I'm going to stamp that. I'm going to start about 1/3 of the way down. And next I'm going to stamp these birds. Those are pretty. And then I'm going to stamp one of the boats over here. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, except I'm going to cut this with the label framelets. So I've got this in this piece, and then I have cut out of Night of Navy, I have cut the next largest label for these two. So it looks like that. You should see my workspace. It's always quite a mess when I'm finished. Okay, so we have this little piece. We have this middle piece. There we go. And then we have our background piece. And what I was going to do for this was I cut a piece of sea foam spray. I thought that would be pretty to highlight it. Oops. I have. Okay. Hi, Steph. It's good to see you. And Susie Golden, hi. Thanks for stopping by tonight. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned before, I use these pieces. So I cut, using the next largest size, I cut a piece of Night of Navy. So I'm going to layer that on here. And the only thing is about these this particular die, and it's just the way this die is made, is as it gets larger, it gets longer. So there's a lot more on this side than there is on these sides. So it's going to be a little bit closer, if that makes sense. So let me put that together. Oops, I kind of lost one of my birds there in the blue. And then this is my little piece. Oops, and that's crooked. Did I mention before I was a perfectionist? Okay. But these cards are handmade, so you want them to look handmade. Somewhat. Okay, so there we go. Pre-cut some sailboats and the lighthouse. I'm going to put the lighthouse over here. I'll use dimensionals for that. Now I have not played around with this technique and any of the Christmas sets yet. I did receive my Christmas pre-order last week, and I have been starting to work on some classes for that, but I haven't played around with this technique in that set at all, in those sets at all. But I have lots of ideas. In September, I will be having a one-day stamp camp, and I have some really cool things planned. It's going to be a little bit different from a typical class. You'll be making some cool 3D items and some really neat holiday items. Okay, so there's this. So now on the inside, I'm going to put a piece of white, since it's Night of Navy. It's hard to... kind of hard to write on Night of Navy unless you have a white pen, or a chalk pen. Okay, and I cut out this cute little rope, which was one of the die cuts that's available. I was going to put that on the bottom. I do really like this set. Okay, and I love this. This is really pretty. Set sail in the direction of your dreams. That's really pretty, and that would make such a pretty retirement card or graduation card as well. And I'm going to actually take the birds from here. There we go. Pretty. Okay. Oops. So I like the look of that. I thought that's really cool, just to do it with the different labels, and really you can use any shape labels. So you could use ovals. You could use the rectangles, which we did. You could use squares, but it's a really cool technique. It just adds a little bit of dimension to the card. So there's our 2 triple time cards. And the dies for the second one are this. So I'll put these back. So what I used to cut the layers was this largest die, and then this die, which is one size bigger than the one that I just put back, so you can see. And that's how I cut my layers. So it's kind of every other die, so that it gives you enough to layer. So we'll put that away. Again, thanks for stopping by. Go over to my website and sign up for my newsletter, stampwithmarilyn.com. Take care. Have a good night.